Oh boy, the 3DS, guys. Oh god, what a system. So, biggest regret I have with the 3DS is I sold most of the games I used to own, or else this stack would be like twice the size that it fucking is. But 3DS games never really lost value back in those days, so I ended up selling a bunch of them to get money for Switch games, which is unfortunate. Now that I have a source of income, I regret it. But I still held on to a good enough chunk, so let's take a look at the ones I still have. Alright guys, so let's start off with Ice Age Continental Drift Arctic Games. I actually beat this game. It's a very boring minigame compilation, and Activision is a greedy company and they make a lot of really bad licensed titles, this being one of them. I still remember when I got this game, I was like 13, 14, the 3D blew me away. Maybe it's because I was just stupid, I don't know. Maybe I still am. Next up we have Rayman 3D. Rayman 3D is basically a Rayman 2. I don't get why they had to change the title of Rayman 2. This is a phenomenal port. If you play it in 3D, it actually adds a lot to the immersion. It is one of the 3DS launch games, and it's a great platformer. I don't know why it gets so much hate. Maybe it gets all the hate because Rayman 2 has been ported like 20 fucking times, which I understand like why it would get some hate. But overall, guys, Rayman 3D is a great port of Rayman 2. Next up, we have Pac-Man and Galaga Dimensions. Though this is basically the Namco Museum for the 3DS, but it's called Dimensions because it really utilizes the 3D aspect. In fact, aside from the classic games included here, this also includes a bunch of exclusive 3DS games, two of them, excuse me, which show off the 3DS exclusively, and that is Pac-Man Tilt and Galaga 3D Impact. And I remember playing Galaga 3D Impact and it just blew my socks off back then, how well the 3DS could do 3D. This was a surprisingly good $20 purchase back in those days, because not only was it a great Namco game bringing back two of my favorite Namco IPs, but it was also a phenomenal tech demo for the 3DS, which really made it a game that I'd recommend anyone's having their 3DS collection. Here's Crush 3D. I think this was another 3DS launch game. I don't know how that happened. God, this game's got damaged since the last time I picked it up off the shelf. Hell, it's not even in the box. Give me 1 second, guys. Yeah, it's in here actually. This is the last 3DS game I played, and this was a while ago. I didn't really like this game. I didn't. It gave me a headache. It's one of those puzzle games where you have to be really into puzzle games to enjoy it. You're not going to get any enjoyment out of it if you're not like a huge puzzle fan. This game essentially just makes you constantly alter the environments. And it's very confusing because you're always changing between 2D, 3D, 2.5D. It's a headache of a game for me personally. It was even on the PSP, but it got ported to the 3DS and they thought they could give it new life. Not with a headache like that. Spirit Camera, this is a spin-off of another series which I'm not very familiar with. But this is a Capcom game, I believe. I can't find their logo anywhere, which is strange, but I think Capcom developed this, or maybe it was just a first-party Nintendo game. And I remember this being a really cool, like, little tech demo for the 3DS. So it comes with this booklet, and essentially you need to use the booklet here to play through the game, because the booklet is basically just a bunch of AR codes. So it's super cool, and one of the best tech demos for the 3DS, in my opinion. Here's a game that gets way too much hate. Chibi Robo Ziplash. This should have been a unique Nintendo IP. I don't get why the hell they made it like a kind of spin-off of the Chibi Robo franchise. I mean, it's a 2D game. You know, I understand why a lot of people are angry with it, because, you know, Chibi Robo is a 3D game in nature. It's an open world type of deal. And I get the anger with that. But, I mean, the characters are so likable. It's still got the vibe of Chibi Robo. And the Castlevania-esque gameplay, like when you're using the cable, kind of like the whip from Castlevania, it's super fun. And the bosses are just super cool, man. Like, I don't know. The only problem I mainly had with this game is it kind of steered away way too much from the traditional formula and the lack of good music. The music was very forgettable. But other than that, this is a 9 out of 10 game for me. It's one of the best platformers I've played on the 3DS, whereas many people really hate it. Here's Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D and Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. Mainly, I'm more of a fan of Majora's Mask. But I haven't really played these Zelda games too much. These are the N64's best Zelda games, and these are some of the best Zelda games of all time, especially Majora's Mask, because the Majora's Mask universe is just so fucked up and so messed up. And the development team behind Majora's Mask was headed by one individual. I forget his name, but he's a prominent developer for Nintendo. And he was going through a dark time in his life, and that's really reflected in this game. But yeah, I really need to put more time into the N64 Zelda games, because they are just some of the best Zelda games, period. Adventure Time Explore the Dungeon, because I don't know. This game is stupid. It's got a lot going for it. The art style is great. The pixel aided art style, like the pixel art style is really neat. The music is fantastic, but the fact that when you die, you lose all your loot at the end of each dungeon, that's just not what you do with roguelikes like this. This is a procedurally generated roguelike. You know, it's a dungeon crawler. That's not how these games are supposed to work. You're supposed to start over, don't get me wrong, but you're not supposed to be losing your loot. Like, what the fuck? It's grindy for the sake of being grindy. It's not well thought out at all. Maybe that's why I paid $6 for it on eBay back when I got it. Because it sucks. Next up we have Adventure Time. Hey, Ice King, Why'd You Steal Our Garbage? This is actually one of the best Adventure Time games. I'd say this is the best Adventure Time game. I haven't put too much into it, but it's very similar to Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Yeah, this was a really good licensed game and a surprisingly phenomenal Adventure Time game that did fans justice. Next, we have Shinobi. This was a really good Shinobi reboot. I remember this being one of the most difficult games on the 3DS in general, but it was still super fun to play. The graphics were gorgeous. The 3D effect had me coming back for more and more back in the day. And it did great service to an otherwise obscure Sega IP. Don't get me wrong, Sega fans know of Shinobi. Shinobi is a big title for Sega fans. But outside of that particular spectrum, it's really just not a well-known franchise anymore. It was prominent in the 90s and in the late 80s on the Master System and the Genesis. But getting these Shinobi reboots was pretty cool, because Sega's made a few of them at this point. And I hope they make another one. Wreck-It Ralph the game is trash. Don't buy it. Epic Mickey Power of Illusion. This is actually one of the best Epic Mickey games. Actually, all of them are pretty good in my opinion. But this is the most unique out of all of them, because this is like a 2D game. And although it's not made by Sega, it's made by Disney Interactive. It feels like the Castle of Illusion games on Genesis, but with an Epic Mickey skin. And the Epic Mickey universe is fantastic, and the Castle of Illusion games are so fun. Even nowadays, the original Genesis Castle of Illusion games are just so freaking fun that this game is just honestly jaw-droppingly gorgeous to look at, and even more fun to play. It's a must-have for any 3DS collector. It's a fantastic take on the Epic Mickey formula and a great spin-off of that franchise. Generator Rex, Agent of Providence. Tetris Axis. This was really cool, because back when Tetris Axis came out, Tetris 99 wasn't the thing back in those days. So you couldn't really get any better for Tetris. So this game really added a lot of new visual improvements, really showcased the 3D of the 3DS console before Tetris Effect and Tetris 99 were even a thing. So this was basically Tetris Effect before Tetris Effect, and yeah, it was just a super fun take on a classic formula, and it utilized 3DS's capabilities quite well. Here's Steel Diver. This game, guys, everyone knows this game was very mixed when it came to reviews. It was one of the 3DS's launch titles, and it was a clunky game. Don't get me wrong, it was a very clunky game, because you had to constantly utilize the touchpad for the 3DS to maneuver your submarine. But it's a great submarine sim, and it is a first-party Nintendo game. They tried to reboot it one time with a $9.99 Nintendo eShop sequel, but this series probably will never get rebooted again. It will probably never get any further games. But it was good for what it was, and that was a simulation type game. And I feel like it felt a little too realistic. I mean, when you play games, you want to kind of cool off with a beer or a soda and just enjoy the game, get your mind off of life. But for fans of simulations, you can't really get any better than this. And it was a first-party Nintendo game, so it had a lot of unique characters, and you could tell that this was one of those titles that was developed by Nintendo. And it utilized the 3DS's 3D capabilities because it was a launch title. Excuse me. Next up, we have Pilot Wings Resort. In my personal opinion, Pilot Wings Resort is the best Pilot Wings game. Without a doubt, the graphics were beautiful, and I just don't get why they had to put it in the Wii Sports universe. Like, it's kind of like a cross between Wii Sports Resort and Pilot Wings. So it's the same island from Wii Sports Resort, which was kind of cool. As someone who grew up with Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort, the music was fantastic. Although this game was short, it was big on fun and big on just utilizing the Nintendo 3DS's 3D technology at a time when things like that were not commonplace. So I really appreciate this game, and it was a fun launch title. Next we have Codenames Theme. This was one of the later 3DS games and a very, very obscure game. It takes place in a steampunk alternate United States of America that is being invaded by aliens. And you have to take orders from Commander Abraham Lincoln to take down the alien menace. And although I did not ever beat this game, it was just such a unique concept, and the cel-shaded art style, even now when I pop it in occasionally, I haven't popped it in a while, but I have popped it in a few times on occasion, it still looks great, it still looks beautiful, and I am a fan of strategy games, so it was cool to have a new first-party Nintendo game being in the strategy genre. Next we have Mario Tennis Open. Mario Tennis Open is the one Mario Tennis game I liked more than the Nintendo Switch title. Aces was a phenomenal game, but for me personally, it's kind of hard to live up to Mario Tennis Open because Mario Tennis Open was so accessible to me as a newcomer to the Mario Tennis franchise, but it was beautiful. I mean, it was a Mario Tennis game in 3D on a handheld, so it was kind of mind-boggling at the time, and I'll never forget it. Just thinking about it makes me all nostalgic. Paper Mario Sticker Star is the next one. This was my first 3DS game I ever got. I got the 3DS right when the XL came out, and this came around the same time frame as that. I have gone back to it, and it doesn't do me justice. Personally, I prefer Thousand Year Door and the game on Switch, Origami King. So, yeah, this doesn't do me justice. Personally, I thought this was trying to be the originals while implementing way too many new things. It's like, decide what you want to be. Whereas Origami King wants to be this new thing. Whereas this is just kind of, I don't know. And also the lack of variety in characters was not a nice addition. The fact that you had to have stickers to battle made it kind of a grind fest. Fossil Fighters Frontier is the next one. I never opened it. I bought it for like $10, I believe, and I never opened it. I just got it dirt cheap because I did like the first game on the DS, but from what I've heard, I don't really even want to try it. Hometown Story. So Hometown Story was basically from the same folks that made Harvest Moon. Actually, this game takes place in the Harvest Moon universe, but I do prefer Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town on Switch. This game kind of feels light on content, although it is a Harvest Moon game, and it is still the same relaxing fun that you would expect from a Harvest Moon game. It just doesn't hold a candle to the ones on Switch. Next, we have Animal Crossing New Leaf. I've put hundreds of hours into this game. This is, in my personal opinion, the best Animal Crossing game to ever release for any Nintendo console. It's fantastic. It's phenomenal. And you're the mayor of your own town, and I love that. And the fact that I couldn't be the mayor of my own town in New Horizons kind of, I don't know, I was too used to it. So yeah, it's a power struggle. Brain Age Concentration Training. This is kind of like Big Brain Academy, you know, it's in the same vein of those educational Nintendo games, nothing too fun. And lastly, we have Goosebumps the game. Goosebumps the game is not my thing. It's a point-and-click adventure type of game. If you saw my last video on my Nintendo Switch collection, you'll know how I feel about these. They're boring. They're just not too accessible for me. They're just too much of a headache for me. I do like the new 3D survival horror Goosebumps game they had on the Switch and other platforms, but this one didn't really do me justice. Although I do appreciate the fact that they try to take from the covers of the original books that I grew up with. Like this is Welcome to Dead House covered, the cover from Welcome to Dead House. And you know, this game utilizes a lot of the same cover art from the covers of those beloved books from my childhood. So I do have a kind of a soft spot for that one right there. So a couple of shout outs to games that I do not have anymore because I sold them. Super Mario 3D Land, phenomenal game. Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon doesn't hold a candle to Luigi's Mansion 3 in my opinion, but that was still had some great memories with that game. And Super Smash Brothers for 3DS, so many great memories with that. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Subscribe to LA Tech Trends for more fantastic content. I'm always putting out new content. So yeah, like, dislike, leave your feedback. I always appreciate it. Peace.